Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Vermont Report on Palestine, Israel. I'm Mark Hage. It is Monday, June 15th. According to the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, 20,863 Palestinians are in desperate need of medical evacuation for treatment. 5,342 are children. The center also tells us that the month of May this year was the deadliest so far for Palestinians. Israeli occupation forces killed 119 Palestinians. In the month of May alone, 19 were children, 10 were women. Children, women, and the elderly made up 30% of the casualties. Now, bear in mind, a ceasefire is still technically in effect. 119 Palestinians killed during a ceasefire. And according to the Gaza Health Ministry, nearly 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since the ceasefire went into effect in 2025. In the occupied West Bank, Oxfam, a humanitarian organization, tells us that between October 7th of 2023 and the end of 2025, 1,244 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces or settlers. 268 were children. The number of Palestinians killed in this limited period of time exceeds the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli forces and settlers over the last 17 years. And when Oxfam looked back at the last 2 decades, 20 years, it found that 22% of Palestinians killed by Israel were children. Returning to Gaza, the specter of famine is once again stalking the territory. Again, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, the decision by the World Central Kitchen in May to reduce the number of meals it was serving daily from roughly 1 million to 200,000 has had a devastating impact. 1.6 million Palestinians, that's 77% of the population, 1.6 million today, are facing acute food insecurity. And this is because Israel is not respecting the terms of the ceasefire that call for it to deliver a set amount of humanitarian aid every day. It is not letting the trucks in, and people in Gaza are going hungry. We have 3 reports for you today. The first is Dr. Saya Aziz being interviewed in late 2025 by Al Jazeera about the time she spent in Gaza as a medical volunteer. This physician came to the territory after the genocide began and was serving in El Shifa Hospital. This was also during the period pre-ceasefire when all of Gaza's health system was under attack. Our second report looks at the way that sex and representations of the male and female and male body have been used by Zionist propagandists to sell the Zionist settler colonial project and to mask its crimes. Sex, as we know, can be used to sell anything, and it's been used very effectively, as you'll see, to sell Zionism. And our third report, our final report, looks at the ways in which Zionism, historically, as a settler colonial project imposed on Palestine, has sought to erase the culture, the memory, the history of the Palestinian people, the indigenous people of that land, and to sever their ties to their ancestral homeland. This report also draws some striking parallels between the experience of indigenous peoples in North America and the indigenous population of Palestine. We'll begin with our first report, an interview with Dr. Saya Aziz.
It is catastrophic. It's cataclysmic. I can't even begin to explain how horrific the situation is.
This is Dr. Saya Aziz. She's an Australian anesthesiologist who's in Gaza right now treating patients alongside Palestinian healthcare workers. She filmed this video with her Australian colleague outside Al Shifa Hospital in northern Gaza.
I had a beheaded lady who's 9 months pregnant that we had to deliver her by an emergency C-section.
Dr. Aziz says she's shocked at what she's seen so far. I spoke to her during one of the brief periods where she had internet access to hear more about what she's witnessed while treating patients in Gaza. What is it that compelled you to go to Gaza knowing the risks?
I have been watching the reels, the videos, the Instagram posts endlessly for the last 2 years. And for me, I'm not only a doctor and a healthcare worker, I have 2 small children. And, you know, watching videos of children has been devastating, and knowing that they're facing such trauma, they're starving, they're hungry, and then, you know, my children, you know, would ask for a cup of water and I would jump up and give it to them. I felt I needed to go and bear witness. I have the privilege of being a qualified professional. I'm not even a trainee, that I had to go and bear witness. Of course, it was going to be hard to leave. I didn't realize it was going to be as dangerous. If I say to you, it's been thousands of times worse than what I've seen on the videos, it's been 100,000 times worse. I've not been able to process it, in the sense that I'm here, I've come to do a job. I'm not here to add to their burden of sorrow, when they're the ones who are continuing on in spite of the horror. Each and every case, everyone would say it would be hopeless in any other, you know, first world country, and yet they continue. Every soul to them matters. Like, I've been shocked at how persistent they are at saving every human life. And for me, it's been the best decision I've ever made to come here, in spite of knowing I've left my family, my children, but, you know, there's no other option for me than to have come in. I feel privileged. It's my first time that I've come here, and I feel lucky and privileged to be amongst these noble people. You hear about the Palestinian resilience. They are the most resilient people, and, you know, they practice gratitude. We just finished a case, another. I've lost count of how many amputations we've done, traumatic amputation, above knee. Why we're doing it, and the patient is alive, the family was grateful. Everything you do, and it's alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'll say, oh, but his arms, I'm like, they're still, he still has his arms. One is broken, but he's still and they're like, alhamdulillah. Everything is, thank goodness. Everyone was friendly. I felt very safe. I felt very welcomed. Everyone smiles. Everyone says, you know, thank you for coming. So, you know, as a foreigner, I felt like I betrayed them. They would see us as part of the group of people who've betrayed them, that they're the forgotten people. But they were so welcoming and thankful that we have come, in spite of the danger to us, when, you know, I have an international passport. I am protected. They aren't.
Can you walk me through your first moments arriving in Gaza and what struck you most?
What struck me most was that when I got through the crossing into Gaza, that is when I took a sigh of relief. I suddenly felt, strangely, I felt safe. And I thought, how strange. I've come into a war zone, and that's when I felt safe. Number 2 is we were taken to Shuhada al-Aqsa, which is where we stayed, which is a hospital in the south, where in theory it's, you know, much better than here.
You're currently at Shifa Hospital, right?
Yep. So we spent 3 days in Al-Aqsa because we had to wait for a UN convoy. The first 3 days we had 3 bombs just outside the hospital door every single day, bombing just outside the hospital. Like, you feel the whole building rattle and shake. And then within 5 minutes, the bodies come flooding in. And this is not just these weapons. People who have thought of such weapons, who've invented such weapons, what kind of human being thinks of shredding body parts in the way it does? There's even bullets that once they get into the human body, they can detonate any single time. They're so tiny you can't even see them. The number of burst abdomens, they open the abdomen, there's holes everywhere, and the tiny piece is not even a millimeter in depth, and it's completely destroyed the bowel. And these patients have open abdomens and left on the wards. There's no nursing staff. The patients are distraught. They're looking for healthcare workers, but the healthcare workers themselves are in the same situation. We literally had the director of the hospital lose all of his children 2 days ago. We had a nurse who literally, they said, was I think he was in the A&E, and he literally him, his wife, his son, daughter died, and he has one remaining son who's full of burns. He can't open his eyes. We don't know if he's lost his vision. He's got broken bones. Who's going to look after these children? Who's going to look after Mohammed and his broken legs and his burnt face? No one to look after him in the sweaty, dirty, filthy wards. And the tragedy is that healthcare workers are distraught because what you see now isn't what Gaza was. All the equipment I recognize, it's exactly what we have in Australia. It's the same pieces of equipment, except they've been using it relentlessly for 2 years, and they've actually had to rescue some of it from when it was bombed in the main state-of-the-art hospital.
You're an anesthesiologist and you're seeing an overwhelming amount of trauma injuries. Do you have the proper medicine and drugs to sedate these patients that need to be operated on?
No, I am an anesthetist, and my main priority is the patient to be anesthetized. The drugs are expired. I'm literally guesstimating. I'm just basically relying on clinical skills and crossing my fingers and relying on their skill set. They have had to anesthetize patients without literally the basic standards for anesthesia. They wake up in pain. I don't have any fentanyl to give them. Morphine is literally titrated. In Al-Aqsa, they had no syringes. I had to use syringes, the same syringe I've used on other patients, to the next repeat patient. Did you hear that? Did you hear that, bomb?
I think so. I heard something.
And that's a quiet one. That's far. That's far. I know now that's afar. That's not nearby. And so I'm having to reuse syringes on patients. I'm doing what I can with the limited equipment. But the main thing I need is sterility. We're doing these operations on patients who are literally have 100% infection rate. There's flies everywhere, flies in wounds. I literally shooing the flies. I had Mohammed, my 10-year-old burns patient. He's in his closed eyes, burnt face. He's just in his drowsiness was asking me to shoo the flies away. He could feel the flies on his skin. That is just not what any human should not be treated like that. They are human. As much as the outside world has tried to dehumanize them, they are more human than anything I have witnessed in the outside world. No healthcare worker in first world country would ever turn up to work for free. They are turning up for free. They're not getting paid. But you see the sorrow and in their eyes. They're having to leave their children in a tent. They're leaving their children and they're walking all that way, leaving at 5 a.m. to get for a 9 o'clock shift. And I'm like, why don't you just go stay? Like, just go. Then you just close the hospital. They said, but who's going to save these souls? If I don't turn up, who will?
What is your understanding of why these basic necessities like syringes, like medicine, like anesthetic are missing at the hospital?
If there's no food coming in, if you've got no syringes, no medicines, what does that do? Is that a direct way of killing people? No, you can say you didn't directly kill them. They just died of disease. Well, who created this disease? They had sanitation, they had running water, they had air conditioning, they had ventilation. Who is preventing the equipment coming in? Now, we all know who's stopping them. We need aid to come in and we need the bombs to stop. They don't need help. They just need people to leave them in peace.
It strikes me as a bit of a cruel game that Israel will say, okay, you highly skilled Western doctors, we will let you come and work in Gaza for 5-6 weeks, but you basically have nothing to work with. Like, it's difficult for me to wrap my mind around this.
I am having to tolerate standards that in any other world I would not tolerate. And it is unjust and unfair because Mohammed deserved a decent anesthetic like any other burns patient. This is not a burns in his home from a toaster that was plugged in and faulty. This is a group of people throwing the most vicious, violent, catastrophic weapons that you can ever think of that are being tested on Palestinians because it's a laboratory. The Palestinians themselves, the Gazans, know each and every weapon. They'll tell you, no, this hasn't been used before. This is a new weapon. The worst thing is you walk through the emergency department and you don't know where to look. There's toddlers crying. You'll go and speak to them. You'll say, are you the mother? No, her mother's just been bombed. Her father's been bombed. They're all dead. I'm the neighbor. We've just retrieved her. We've only been here, if you think about it, a fraction of the 2 years. And there's a beheaded mother, a decapitated mother, 9 months pregnant. In fact, one of the first days I did an amputation on a woman who was 6 months pregnant. She lost her right arm. She lost both of her legs, and she's 6 months pregnant, and that's survivable. That child will live and will continue on. But how will that mother look after the baby? How will she survive her wounds? Will she miscarry in the interim? What kind of nutrition is she going to get? She has other children to look after. Like, who's looking after her? How is the husband or family member going to look after her and look after all the children?
Were you able to speak to that mother?
I don't know where they go. I don't know where they go. We literally put them in the corridor, hope someone's going to look after them. There's no nursing staff. There's no recovery. It's the same corridor that's filled with flies. I wish there's so much lost in video. There's the smells, the sight, the dust. Everything is covered in thick layers of dust. They want to sweep. They want to mop. There's nothing. I wasn't able to talk to her, but when I can, I try and find them. But I can't even get through a corridor because you literally get stopped by everyone, and they'll say, can you come and see my son? Can you come and see my mother? Can you come and see my wife?
Dr. Aziz, you are describing and witnessing an incredible amount of trauma. And I just want to ask you, how are you doing?
I am doing fine because I've seen the locals coping. And as a doctor, to some degree, you have to dissociate the two. You have to dissociate from your work to real life. I feel like I've been witnessing it for the last 2 years. And for anyone or a doctor who's not been seeing it, I think it would be a shock. There have been some doctors who have come, I've been told, and they were barely able to do one day and they requested to leave. And thankfully, I've not felt that way at all. And I felt if they're having to cope with this and they're witnessing it for 2 years, I think I can cope for 2 weeks. And I felt it's a privilege. I felt it's a privilege that I have been able to witness their soul. I've never felt a more spiritual group of human beings than I have in Gaza. The staff are phenomenal in the emergency department. They're phenomenal in the theatres. I have never seen procedures performed at the speed of light, not even in the highest performing trauma hospital that I have worked at. They are insane, like in terms of their speed, capabilities. And they're like, well, we've had to. If we don't learn how to do this, no one else will do it. Every single person I know in this hospital has lost at least 1 or 2 family members. They have themselves been injured and they're still working. So who am I to say that I don't have courage or ability to witness such horrors? If my government doesn't want to do anything, then I will. If they don't have the courage to stand up to true and horrible, undescribable horror and evil, then if they don't have the courage, then I will.
Mm-hmm. One of the first things you said in this interview is that you wanted to go to Gaza to bear witness. And as you know, Israel has banned international journalists from going into Gaza and reporting. And so here you are, both a doctor and effectively working as a journalist, relaying to the world what you're seeing. Are you worried that Israel will target you for speaking out?
I hate to say it, but yes. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I want to see them. I don't want to die, but at the same time, if the local, my colleagues, my healthcare workers are staying, then I'm not going to leave them and run for my life when in theory I should be protected. Do I think that they have absolute impunity and feel able to do that and then, ask for forgiveness later or apologize? Yes, we've seen it multiple times, relentlessly for the last 2 years. We have been bombed outside of the hospital. Last night I walked through and in the dust and the rubble, there was, an elderly couple sleeping. in the dust and the rubble, and I couldn't stop to ask them their story, because each and every one has a story. And you don't know why the elderly, they respect their elderly. Like in the Western nations, you have elderly patients and everyone thinks, oh, they're elderly, it's okay, they've had a good life. But here, the elderly held such high level of status that they will do everything to save them. And to have that elderly couple not have anyone there, you don't know their story, but you know. So yeah, I feel obliged to stay. I feel obliged to stay. So yeah, I will stay until we have to leave.
You are a mother of 2 young children, as you mentioned, and they're back in Australia. How did you explain to them where you're going and why you have to do it?
Look, they know about what's happening in Gaza because I have taken them to protests when I've been able to. I've spoken to them about what's happening. I've said and it's hard to take a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old to a protest that will last hours. But I explained to them there are some children and mothers and fathers that are being murdered relentlessly in a faraway country. And I say there's some bad guys that are hurting them. And, my daughter has said, are the bad guys here? And as in Australia, and I've had to hold back and say no. So I actually, in fact, didn't tell them, and I haven't told them I've gone to Gaza because I know my 6-year-old would be worried. So I actually said to her that I was going to Jordan on a mission, but being away from them for a month and potentially longer is heartbreaking. But I know they're safe. They're with my husband. Some mothers in Gaza will never see their children again. I think I can cope for a month. They can cope for a month. I'm here to do what I can to bear witness and, to do what our governments should be doing, helping.
If there's one thing you wanted people watching this interview to know and understand about what's happening in Gaza right now and what you're witnessing, what is it?
It's carnage. It's end of days, nightmare, apocalyptic nightmare. You walk in and it's like an abattoir. Even an abattoir would have some hygienic methods of killing. They're not animals, they're humans. But you'd look around, you drive around and think it's hopeless. You see the cases, you think it's hopeless. The Gazans don't think it's hopeless. They have life, they have hope. It's not too late. It's definitely not too late. They never look back. They've told me, they said, we don't need help. We just need to be left alone. It's not too late. Stopping the arms, sanctioning Israel. I can guarantee you, if these scenes were reported from Ukraine, there would have been world outrage. Is their blood not as worthy?
For a long time, Israel has used sex to sell Zionism, to convince people that Israel is a hot fantasy being realized by hot people, not a racist settler colony built on the killing, displacement, and erasure of the indigenous Palestinians. This is intentional, and there are 3 reasons why. They involve Israel's invention in the past, cover-up in the present, and survival for the future. And this all started when Zionists first started plotting for the creation of a Jewish homeland in the late 1800s. For centuries in Europe, stereotypes of Jews were that they were weak, pale, and frail, and the Zionist movement came to see it this way too, widely criticizing the weak, old Jew. In 1898, at the Second Zionist Congress in Switzerland, the co-founder of the Congress, Max Nordau, called for a new Judaism, a muscular Judaism, and invented the idea of the new Jew. This Jew would be rugged, muscular, strong, and tanned, and would have the mental and physical strength to realize the goals of Zionism and colonize Palestine. They called themselves Sabra, the prickly pear fruit in Hebrew, to represent what they saw this new Jew to be, hard and prickly on the outside, but tender-hearted and sensitive on the inside. And, of course, native to the land. Of course, the sabr, as it's called in Arabic, is a fruit indigenous to Palestine, appropriated for the Zionist fantasy of indigeneity. But anyway.
The men who came out to found this colony had never handled a plow, but they were possessed by three ideals: land, liberty, and labor.
It is these new Jews that created the Zionist militias that planned and orchestrated the Nakba, the mass-scale killing and displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, ending with the creation of Israel. And those same militias would become the Israeli army, the violent occupying force overseeing the colonization of Palestine today. And it's through this army that the visual of the new Jew lives on. But then with time, this visual became the only visual of Israel. This was a problem. In the early 2000s, surveys in the US were showing that Israel had a big PR problem with men aged 18 to 35 who just saw Israel as a conflict zone and weren't interested. So another rebrand was due, and the solution this time was bikinis. In 2007, the Foreign Ministry and the Ministry of Tourism arranged for a photo spread in Maxim magazine, one of the most popular men's lifestyle magazines at the time. The brains behind this initiative at the Israeli consulate in New York said the models were, quote, a Trojan horse to present Israel as a modern country with nice beaches and pretty women. This video is from the official Israel in New York YouTube channel.
So you should come to Israel. We have a beautiful country, great food, great culture. Come to Israel. Beautiful girls as well. See you at the party.
This strategy, also called bikini diplomacy, has been seen all over since, with Israel constantly selling the image of a liberal, free country where it's always summer, where the days are full of beaches, bikinis, and chiseled bodies, and the nights are spent in an incredible nightlife scene open to anyone and everyone. In the face of this fantasy, Palestinians come off like a backwards, pesky nuisance trying to disrupt this liberal orgy utopia, not like colonized people looking for freedom and dignity. But that was in a time before social media, where only the powerful had access to a platform. Times have changed, and so the sexy offensive has had to adapt. All over TikTok and Instagram, you can find videos of Israeli soldiers posting thirst traps or dancing videos. Some of them act independently, while others are part of a concerted effort putting attractive women in the occupation forces in the public eye. Like the women at Alpha Gun Angels, a gun modeling and social media marketing agency who sell being a colonial foot soldier as a sexy lifestyle.
But listen, I've been in the army, I'm Israeli, I'm tough.
Thirst traps aren't only reserved for women, but for weapons as well. And beyond selling sex, they're selling colonial occupation as fun, relatable, and empowering. They love gay pride content, girl boss content, and jumping on TikTok trends. Of course, the great irony is that none of these liberal values are extended to Palestinians. They live under occupation, regardless of what they identify as. In that, colonialism does not discriminate. When the Palestinian reality started reaching people around the world, the strategy had to change. Whereas the goal before might have been to rebrand and repackage Israel, the goal now is to distract and whitewash. So bikinis were traded in for military uniforms. Fine, military occupation is a part of the reality, but it's not what you think. It's empowering and fun and sexy. Do you really think people this fun, young, and free would have it in them to commit war crimes? The public perception of Israel is essential to its survival, but so is something else. That there are enough settlers there to keep up the colonizing. That brings us to the final reason Israel uses sex to sell Zionism. So Jewish Zionists have more kids with other Jewish Zionists. Have you ever heard of birthright? It's an all-expenses paid trip to Israel that young Jews across the world are eligible for, as long as they're between 18 and 26.
Thousands of Birthright Israel participants filling the seashore with endless smiles, scholars, accents, and 10 bodies.
I didn't really have a connection to the homeland, and I came here, and just everybody's so great, and I'm just like overcome with like connection.
It's like you're high on Zionism.
I am really high right now.
The trip is sold as a journey home for young Jews to connect with Israel on an emotional and adventurous 10-day itinerary where they're accompanied by Israeli soldiers. That's not a coincidence. In the early days of Birthright, the billionaire co-founder Charles Bronfman said, Quote, he was bothered that the kids on those early trips weren't bonding with their Israeli peers. His answer was developing the mifgash, the encounter, between Jewish Israeli teens and their diaspora counterparts. These encounters move very fast to what we call hormonal mifgashim. Things happen.
Countless romances from the trips have blossomed into serious relationships and even marriages.
And it looks like these boys and girls like each other a lot. I mean, you might have a lot of Jewish babies coming out of this trip eventually, a lot of marriages, a lot of relationships. Is that part of it?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be eventually, it can be tonight.
It's not a coincidence that intimacy is a part of the trip. Participants spend the whole trip with Israeli soldiers intentionally chosen to be attractive. They're taken out for nights of drinking and dancing, and some even spend a night in a fake Bedouin tent, quote, where participants sleep crowded together, a setup conducive to first kisses.
I remember even on the trip that I attended, there were two Israeli soldiers who clearly were into each other. Like they very much had a vibe. And someone made a joke on the trip that you have to save yourselves for the Americans, basically clarifying that they were there to seduce us.
So why is coupling so encouraged on these trips? Well, the originator of the idea for Birthright said one of his main goals was to, quote, create a situation whereby spouses are available, because at the time, intermarriage between Jews and non-Jews was at a high, which isn't great when you're trying to build an ethnocracy. To maintain a demographic majority over Palestinians, Israel needs Jews to make more Jews. So what better way to encourage reproduction and immigration than through a coming-of-age, euphoric, emotional, and adventurous trip? The reality of Israel's nation-building story is violence, displacement, dispossession, colonization, and settlement. That's not a great brand. In order to get settlers invested in the vision and try to secure the future, sex is a great tool. Beauty and aesthetics and fun are great marketing tactics, and they have tangible outcomes, like more babies. More babies means more people to get conscripted to the occupation forces and maintain the oppressive military infrastructure necessary for Israel to exist. And what better way to convince people to at least look the other way, and at most participate, than by making it sexy?
If we could find the right piece of land and build them some really nice places.
Where would those pieces of land be?
Well, they could be in Jordan, and they could be in Egypt.
Settlers have been trying to erase the indigenous for a very long time, and they've developed lots of tools for the toolbox. War, disease, famine, settlements, re-education camps. But there's one in particular that's been on my mind: forcible transfer.
And you'd have people living in a place that could be very beautiful.
It's interesting because if you survive the move, you're still alive. You carry with you your memories and you fight to pass them down to your children and them to theirs.
This is Cabri Forest.
But there's something else that dies. Something bigger and older than any individual life or home left behind. The essence of a people. So what exactly gets lost when you uproot a people? If you like our work and want to help us continue telling stories like this, you can become a paid member of our Patreon. Now back to the video. From the moment I saw this painting, I was mesmerized. Mostly by her hands. They're big and strong, and she carries all those oranges effortlessly, like her hands were made for it. She feels really familiar and looks so out of place. It's called The Immigrant by Palestinian artist Suleiman Mansour. I first saw it in Bethlehem in 2018 on my trip to Palestine. I was there alone, going through the grief and honor of being back on our land, not just for myself, but for the whole family. Because I was the first person able to actually go back. So I logged everything. Looking through all the pictures now, it's mostly of the land. Especially when I got to what used to be our village, Al-Kabri. It's on the outskirts of Akka, in the north of occupied Palestine. Our village is one of over 500 Palestinian towns and villages that were destroyed when Zionist militias ethnically cleansed Palestine. I took lots of pictures for my family to see, and for myself.
It's like we never existed.
to try to hold on to it, to this plot of earth that to Israelis is now a highway, a national forest, and a kibbutz. But to me, to us, this was home for, as far as we can trace it, a very long time.
We were driving through the kibbutz that they built, and you should see the trees that they have. I swear to God, a pomegranate tree with the biggest, fattest, ripest, most red pomegranate. The color is so vibrant, so healthy.
I asked my family what we used to grow on our land besides tobacco, which I knew. Vegetables, fruits, oranges, lemons, and grapes. It wasn't easy to get the information.
You don't understand how gorgeous it is here.
My dad reached out to his cousin, who asked his uncle, who also lived in the village. I wonder how much else we lost that I don't even know to ask about. See, when a people are uprooted, they may have survived, they may be alive, but there's something invaluable that can die. Something immaterial and bigger than any individual life. And it's this thing that explains what it means to be indigenous. I realized this when I was learning about another indigenous people halfway across the world. They called it Turtle Island, and for thousands of years it was home to millions of Native Americans. In the Pacific Northwest, abundant forests and waterways created cultures centered on fishing and forestry, like the Tlingit. Tlingit speakers don't say left or right, they say toward the water or toward the mountains. One ancient narrative they tell is of Salmon Boy, a story that speaks to how salmon, a central part of their sustenance and culture, feel, make choices, and respond to human actions. In the Great Plains, bison herding was the main way of life for tribes like the Lakota. So life followed the herds and was nomadic. Buffalo were central to survival, culture, and spirituality.
They clothed us, they fed us, they gave us inner strength to carry on.
The buffalo adopted the Indian, the Lakota, as his younger brother.
And in the southeast, fertile lands allowed for large-scale agriculture. This area was home to the Cherokee, who, along with others, used complex irrigation systems to grow the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, grown together in a sustainable system where each plant supported the other. They also, along with many other tribes across North America, practiced controlled burning, which would clear undergrowth and make space for edible plants and medicinal herbs. This maintained healthy forests and reduced wildfires.
Work with nature, expand habitat, decenter humans, and design for perpetuity.
And there's way more. Before the first arrival of settlers, around 250 distinct languages were spoken. And each of these languages is inseparable from the land it comes from. The mountains, rivers, forests, and creatures of every region are woven into the language, stories, ceremonies, and way of life of the people who live there, and are considered animate beings. Losing access to this land would mean losing access to this language, which is losing an entire system of knowledge and spiritual connection. Unfortunately, that would come to happen for many Native American tribes, when settlers arrived with a very different philosophy towards the land.
They often mislabeled them as virgin land or wilderness instead of what they really were, living heirlooms, thousands of years in the making.
Settlers to the New World saw this land not as a living, breathing being, but as a blank canvas, a 2D backdrop to carve out a new civilizational fantasy. They did a lot to clear the natives: massacres, disease, broken treaties, but we're looking at forcible transfer. The most famous example comes from the southeast. It's known as the Trail of Tears. It's when the US government forcibly removed thousands of indigenous people from their ancestral lands in the 1830s. People were marched at gunpoint with little food and poor shelter for hundreds of miles in extreme weather.
Sick and feeble, many near death. One woman was carrying her youngest child who was dying in her arms.
Those that survived the journey made it to a radically different terrain: Oklahoma. Thousands of years of self-sufficiency, language, science, medicine, diet, spirituality, all tethered to the land, suddenly suspended from the reality they're based on. In this new reality, resources weren't as abundant and communities were split up. Previously self-sufficient and environmentally sustainable tribes became dependent on US government rations. Cut off from their sacred sites, ceremonies and spiritual practices began fading away. And they cut them off from one another. Children were sent to boarding schools where, separated from their families, they were forcibly assimilated into white Euro-American culture. Yes, they were alive, but something else was being killed. Inherited knowledge, science refined over generations, a responsibility to tend to the plants and animals of a region, a sense of collective self, totally uprooted. Things that define a culture and a people are learned organically, from just existing in your community on your land. Removing the land removes the space for that exchange, and splitting up communities makes trying to collect that knowledge to save it so much harder. I wonder what words we had in our dialect that we lost to the Nakba, what rituals around land we would perform, what creatures we tended to. I'm sure it's out there somewhere or in someone. Thankfully, they didn't manage to expel us all.
أتذكر هذا الشارع اللي أكل من إجري رأت وأنا رايح على المدرسة، في المدرسة الكابرة أنا تعلمت. كنا عايشين مش بيقولوا مهد عيسى يا أخي، إحنا كنا عايشين في الجنة في مهد عيسى صدقني. عندنا اكتفاء ذاتي، جماعة فلاحين على قدنا، عايشين بقرنا مبسوطين.
But they expelled plenty. Just like Turtle Island, with tribes changing as the land does, Palestine's diverse terrain is home to diverse, old relationships to the land. That's why so many of our symbols are from the land. The sabr, the date, the figs, the grapes, the watermelon, the orange, za'atar, and of course, the olive tree. Every year after the first rainfall of October, it's harvesting season. Families gather to pick trees that are hundreds of years old, on groves passed down from generation to generation.
When you ask them, for example, how do you think your olive yield is going to be this year? Their answer is always about, depends on my service. They believe they are serving the tree. And I know this all sounds so romantic in some way, but actually it's still in the language. They call it service. It is a relationship based on reciprocity rather than one person using the soil and abusing the soil to get the crop they want.
The land finds its way into Palestinian clothing too. The embroidery, or tatriz, on women's clothing would reflect the area, town, or village of the person wearing it, and the natural landscape of every region. And the land is central in our music and our dance. And despite the differences from place to place, Palestinians have always been in communication with one another, trading and exchanging, traveling, gathering for ceremonies and festivals. Until they came.
The colonists' aggressive attitude towards the native peasants stemmed from their anger towards those who reminded them that there is still another people in the land of Israel that have been living there and does not intend to leave.
They say it was a land without a people for a people without a land, and that they made the desert bloom. In 1948, Zionist militias methodically ethnically cleansed Palestine for Zionist settlement, leading to the expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians from their homes. We call this the Nakba. The new reality was a fragmented Palestine carved into 4 new colonial geographies: the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and the 48 territories, what they call Israel. That's where our village was. Some Palestinians were able to remain, but many were effectively transferred to refugee camps both in these new territories and in neighboring countries like Jordan and Lebanon. My maternal grandmother was in the womb when her father was killed, the first martyr from our village, and her mother left on foot, alone, pregnant, and with 4 other children, to Lebanon. She made it to a camp called Burj al-Barajne, where my grandmother would be born and raised, and would eventually meet my grandfather. My paternal grandparents were from the same village. They left to Burj al-Barajne too, It's one of 12 Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon that are still around today.
The camera's not even doing it justice, I swear to God.
I think it's hard to gather information about what we lost in Palestine because the trauma didn't end with leaving El Kabri. It continued in Lebanon.
Their right to work and own property are limited by Lebanese law.
Life in Lebanon for Palestinian refugees was not easy. They left behind their property and their wealth and their lives to start from scratch in a new place where they were and still are barred from working in 39 different fields, including law, engineering, and medicine.
اللي بعتذر منك ما مشغل فلسطينية. قلت له بس بدي أسألك سؤال إنه أنت بمراءك خلقت لبناني يعني بمراءك أنت خلقت لبناني وأنا خلقت فلسطيني؟ قال لي مش من عنا الوزارة ما بتقبل تشغل فلسطيني.
And then in 1975, there was the Lebanese Civil War.
The toll of human life is horrifying,
which started when Lebanese Falangist militias ambushed a bus carrying Palestinian civilians, killing 27 people.
When Jordan expelled the Palestinian guerrillas in 1970, many of them moved into Lebanon, from whose southern border they could stage raids against Israel.
We are against the Palestinian because we think that the whole problem is the Palestinian. We have 450,000 Palestinians in Lebanon. This is our problem.
The war lasted 15 years and saw thousands of Palestinians massacred.
The ruins of a Palestinian refugee camp on the outskirts of Beirut. The immensity of the crime shocked the world. The killers, members of a Lebanese rightist militia, got away as easily as they had arrived. To do so, they had to pass through Israeli lines.
During the war, Israel invaded Lebanon, overseeing massacres and bombing campaigns. My aunt Buran was killed when Israel bombed the bus she was on in 1982.
I guess that's it.
What's been passed down to me about El Kabri is factual. What we grew, who our neighbors were, how we lived. But there's information I crave that I'm not sure survived in our family. How did we tend to these plants? When did we harvest? What did we call a specific bud? What plants did we use medicinally? Like most Palestinian refugees, they left in a hurry with their keys in their pockets, expecting to come back. I don't think they had the time or luxury to pause and collect these tidbits in the middle of more unfolding trauma. Thankfully, not all of us were transferred. Many remained and continue to keep these traditions alive and are working on preserving and reviving them for future generations. But Israel continues to try to forcibly remove Palestinians from their land, either explicitly
to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher level.
or by making life so unlivable that Palestinians might voluntarily leave.
Families on the move, just some of the tens of thousands of Palestinians whom Israeli soldiers have forced from their homes in the occupied West Bank.
What they did to Gaza, they're now doing to us.
In the West Bank, it looks like home demolitions, land seizures, tearing up roads, denying electricity, denying water. And there's a particular terror reserved for Palestinian shepherds and farmers, still deeply rooted in the land. And in Gaza, getting people to voluntarily leave looks like maintaining a suffocating, oppressive siege, where at one point, Israel even controlled how many calories made it in. And of course, indiscriminately decimating the strip. Its people, its infrastructure, and its land. The orchards, farms, trees, soil, groundwater, sea, and air were all directly targeted to make Gaza unlivable, to break the connection to the land by breaking the land.
شجر الزيتون هذا كله هان مات تعرض لضربة قوية.
It wasn't just a genocide, it was also ecocide.
How many olive trees did you have?
4,500.
And how many of them did Israel destroy during this genocide?
All.
Is this the first time that Israel has destroyed your olive groves?
No, the fourth time.
But in the face of all this violence and terror, Palestinians remain. And not only do they remain, they return.
Started to smell like Gaza.
الله يرحم حامد يا أمه، الله يرحمه، كان هو اللي بيستقبلنا أول واحد يا أمه. بسيبها وبطلع، لا بموت بغزة وأنا بسيبها. بوس ترابها قبل ما تروح، بوس ترابها.
It's in these situations that the meaning of indigeneity is on full display. Despite having protections not afforded to Palestinians, in the face of danger, the settler flees because there's no tether to the land. That's why they say things like this.
How can you say they don't want to leave?
I don't know how they could want to stay. It's a demolition site. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative.
Because to the settler, a good life is possible on any land. Land is just a place to live, a backdrop. It might have some excavated ideological story, but there's no relationship, no roots to keep them settled. That's why when they came to Palestine, they planted thousands of pine trees over the remnants of Palestinian villages. Trees for cover, trees for decoration, a prop. And why from when they arrived to this day, they don't seem to have difficulty burning and uprooting olive trees that are hundreds of years old. According to an Iroquois story of creation, the world was made when Sky Woman fell from above and was saved by the animals below. The geese caught her, the turtle carried her, and the muskrat dove to the bottom of the sea to bring her mud that she would use to make land. She spread the mud across the turtle's back and began to sing and dance in appreciation. And as she did, the land grew and grew from a smear of mud to what we know as the earth. It's why they call North America Turtle Island. The story speaks to a central philosophy in their culture, that the land is not our property, isn't ours to own. It welcomed us, saved us, and we feed it in return. It reminds me of how in Arabic we say أصحاب الأرض, which literally translates to friends of the land.
سامحنا لأن إحنا ما إحناش قادرين نحافظ عليك.
Indigeneity doesn't just mean to live on a land for ages. If that were the case, settlers would eventually become indigenous too, and those forcibly transferred would stop being indigenous.
اضربهم ما فيش حد بيفيدك. لا مصر ولا الأردن. اضربنا وبس.
To be indigenous means to be part of the land, part of its ecosystem, its tending, its caretaking. It's a responsibility and connection and inherited knowledge that you can't know in a lifetime.
حالي في زيتونة ولا بطلع.
بدك تربطي حالك في زيتونة ولا تطلعي.
So when you remove people from their land and drop them somewhere foreign to them, you have severed the continuity of this ancient knowledge.
And our elders have told us that our job is to remember.
Unfortunately, some of it gets lost forever. But the wound this removal leaves, and the need to keep the connection alive, will always remain.
means I am still here.
هاي رسالة من ستي اللي مواليد 1922 لترامب اللي بده يهجرنا. ما غصب عنك يا ستي بدهم يطلعونا.
ريت روحها تطلع. احنا ثابتين في الأرض زي الزيتون.
That's our report. As always, thank you for watching. I'm Mark Hage, and this has been the Vermont Report on Palestine, Israel.